Welcome to the Wow MD podcast, where in each episode you will get in 30 minutes or less valuable pearls about holistic wellness, anti-aging, hormone therapies, beauty trends, and other facts you should know about our medical healthcare system and your health that no one is telling you. My name is Dr. Mirala Chernayanu. I am a conventional board-certified OBGYN physician who, after the loss of my father due to a careless and uncaring medical team, decided to retrain and seek certification in anti-aging and restorative therapies. What I know, I am happy to share with you. Today's podcast is the beginning of a short, brief series of episodes about vaginal wellness as we age. Let's talk about genitourinary syndrome of menopause. It's also abbreviated as GSM. Genitourinary for G, S for syndrome, M for menopause. GSM is a new term that encompasses or includes what used to be vaginal atrophy. And this is pretty much simply referring to the vaginal changes during menopause, as well as the urinary changes, which have finally been accepted as being part of the menopause changes. Therefore, they have been included and labeled together as part of GSM, genitourinary syndrome of menopause. So in simple layman terms, you have vaginal wellness, sexual wellness, and urinary wellness changes that are drastically impacted as you go through menopause and live your life post-menopause, and they are now labeled GSM. So if your doctor says, hey, you suffer from GSM issues, you're like, yep, I know what that means. I've listened to Dr. C's podcast, so I'm all in. I know exactly what this is. Now, we do love labeling and relabeling things in medicine. Maybe we think we're innovating. In reality, we're just a little stagnant, and whatever's been acknowledged by many doctors and experts, and they have known for decades, simply eventually gets validated when finally opinion expert medical societies decide to change the name to better reflect what we know and we have known for a long time and kind of bring it up to present. So genitourinary syndrome of menopause includes all the changes that happen to the vaginal canal, the vaginal opening, the vulva, the urethra, and the bladder. And all of this is due to the loss of estrogen during and after menopause. It refers to a wide array of symptoms. Vaginal discomfort all the way to vaginal pain, spontaneously or with intercourse. Obviously, it includes the very noticeable vaginal dryness, which some women notice even in perimenopause. And this will eventually lead to difficulty with intercourse. At the beginning, people use lubrication, which works, but eventually stops working, eventually will cause pain. The other array of symptoms are recurrent vaginal infections due to the deficiency of lactobacilli. I'll talk more about that in a minute. The friendly bacteria, which is normally supported by glycogen, and this will no longer exist in your vaginal lining because glycogen requires estrogen. And once you lose your estrogen, you will literally lose your friendly bacteria. Outside the vaginal dryness, there are vaginal infections and vaginal pain. A woman will also experience urinary frequency, urgency, and what we call nocturia. That means a woman will get up more than 2 times a night to void, to go use the bathroom. Now, I don't know about you, but this bugged the heck out of me when I went through menopause myself. This issue was a major sleep disruptor, and I can see it as extremely impactful for the quality of life for anyone, men and women. Not only do you get up to go use the bathroom, but when you come back, now you're wide awake and you can't fall asleep. You start reading or doing something else. Before you know it, it's been an hour and now you want to go pee again. You go pee and finally you hope you can fall back asleep, but then you wake up an hour later and you want to go pee again. Imagine getting up 4 or 5 times a night. That's what happened to me. I didn't really have a whole lot of hot flashes, but that voiding and getting up a million times a night to go pee bugged the heck out of me. 4 to 5 times a night is almost every hour. What kind of sleep do you think that woman will be getting, and what kind of energy do you really think she will have the next morning? Not good. So on top of the frequency, the urgency, and voiding in the middle of the night, another feature and very important symptom of genitourinary syndrome of menopause is recurrent UTIs. If you don't know what a UTI is, it stands for a urinary tract infection or the very common bladder infection. Why are we talking about UTIs and why I'm finally happy that UTIs are getting yes, they're caused by menopause. Yes, they're caused by loss of estrogen. They require antibiotics. And unfortunately, the antibiotics will disrupt your gastrointestinal microbiome, leading to more problems. And to add insult to the injury, many women who suffer from recurrent UTIs get these UTIs related to the act of intimacy with their partners. And unfortunately, some women have to take a preventive dose of antibiotic every time they're sexually intimate with their partner to avoid a UTI. They've been doing this for years and maybe decades. And unfortunately, it gets worse after menopause. And they've been doing this during their normal reproductive years, and some women are simply prone to this. But this specific subset of women are even more prone to this after menopause. And in an aging post-menopausal woman, a UTI can manifest without the burning when you urinate, so it can be more subtle. It can simply manifest with just some urgency, frequency, which you already have anyway, and a little bit of slight pelvic discomfort, so you don't really know you have a UTI until sometimes it's too late, especially in older women. Suddenly they have back pain, chills, fever, they feel terrible, and they wonder what's going on, and it turns out now they're sick and they have a kidney infection or sepsis from an untreated UTI. Many women try to manage those symptoms with over-the-counter supplements, and D-mannose is one of them. And this is very, very helpful. Don't get me wrong. I love D-mannose. I carry it in the office. I have it in my little supplement display cabinet. But the elephant in the room is ignored. What is the elephant in the room? All these urinary symptoms are due to the loss of estrogen after menopause. So obviously, the cure is simple. We need some estrogen. Now, we could prevent all these symptoms. We could prevent all this suffering. Everything you will take is just a little bit of estrogen. Now, here's the thing. Today's podcast series, and this is the first episode of a little series, is not about estrogen replacement therapy or estrogen therapy. It's really about the safety and efficacy of vaginal estrogen. Women who are afraid of estrogen need to hear this podcast episode, need to listen to it. So if you listen to it and it resonates with you and you know someone that could benefit, send them this episode. It will change their life for so much better. Now, here's the thing, and you should be told this by many doctors who are up to date. Unfortunately, many doctors are not up to date. But here's the truth. Vaginal estrogen is safe for women that have been diagnosed and treated for breast cancer. Vaginal estrogen is safe for women who carry the genetic mutation called BRCA gene, which is an abbreviation for the breast cancer gene syndrome. Vaginal estrogen is safe for women who have or suffer from clotting disorders, which predispose them to an increased risk of clotting. Clots, DVT, pulmonary embolism. It is safe. And vaginal estrogen is safe for women who have suffered a heart attack and are at risk for another heart attack. And it's also safe for women who have had a stroke, even if they are at risk for another stroke. This is the general consensus and the opinion of both conventional medicine and hormone experts worldwide. It is the opinion of North American Menopause Society, which is pretty much the most official body in the United States when it comes to all things hormones. How is vaginal estrogen different than normal estrogen therapy? Well, estrogen hormone replacement therapy is administered either daily with a cream, a gel, a pill. It's administered twice a week if it's a patch, or every 3 to 4 months if it's an injectable subcutaneous pellet. There's also a vaginal ring that releases a pretty steady amount of estradiol on a daily basis that can be changed every 3 months. This is all what we call in medical terms systemic estrogen therapy. You will get estrogen levels that are anywhere from 40 to 60 and close to what you had in your 40s. Okay? Now, just a short parenthesis before I go further. I want to clarify a little bit and discuss for just a couple of seconds why the term replacement has been replaced. The North American Menopause Society changed the term hormone replacement therapy for what we used to mean hormone therapy after menopause to simply call it hormone therapy. By removing the word replacement, it wants to make the point that there is no approved deficiency that is being replaced, that all women go through menopause as a natural state. So therefore, it's accepted that menopause means zero estrogen for the rest of your life after menopause. And there is no need to have it replaced. There might be need for therapy if you have symptoms. I'm going to quote exactly how the statement appears in the Menopause Guide issued by the North American Menopause Society. Start quote. The term replacement is a misnomer because post-menopause estrogen levels are low in all women. That is the norm. It is not a deficiency state for which replacement is required. Women have high levels of estradiol and other hormones for a period of approximately 40 years for purposes of reproduction, conceiving. Pre-puberty and post-menopause levels are low, suggesting that those phases in a woman's life are not the optimal time for conception. Use of hormone therapy after menopause is considered therapeutic for menopause symptoms. End quote. So, in other words, women don't need estrogen except for the specific purpose of reproduction or if you're dying of symptoms of low estrogen. Now, I don't know about you. I agree this is a biological view of a woman's body, but I feel a little insulted. I think there's much more to women, and I've said this before in quite a few of my podcast episodes, if you're listening. We need estrogen, not just to reproduce, not just to be the vehicle for the perpetuation of our species, right? We need estrogen because it makes us feel good. And if women suffer from the loss of a major hormone, just like they suffer from loss of thyroid, from loss of adrenal hormone, why not call the loss of estrogen an actual deficiency that should or could be replaced? Well, maybe that's dangerous, and it's suggesting to all women that they lose something precious when they lose estrogen. Whereas telling you, hey, you only need estrogen to get pregnant, it's normalizing the fact that without estrogen after menopause, it's all good. You don't really need estrogen. Anyway, I've been meaning to talk about this for a while, so I simply forgot, but I've had it on my list of things to talk about. So if you do hear me mention hormone replacement therapy, and it's also on my website, please forgive me. It's not that up to date. It's not the most modern view of what estrogen therapy is considered. It's no longer considered replacement. But since I'm old school and I've gone through the times of hormone replacement therapy, and I believe women need it, I will still call it replacement. So coming back to the vaginal estrogen. The vaginal estrogen is different than the systemic estrogen. I just told you that the systemic estrogen, it's estrogen delivered to the whole body that will really impact your estrogen levels, and it requires progesterone. They need to be balanced together, and sometimes that's given with testosterone as well. Vaginal estrogen is dosed and administered purely for the local effect. It very specifically targets genitourinary syndromes of menopause, and it's really extremely effective at alleviating all of the GSM symptoms. Even women who are on regular estrogen replacement therapy or systemic therapy or estrogen therapy might require vaginal estrogen. Well, how come? In many cases, the amount of estrogen that it takes to alleviate menopause symptoms, whatever they are, the amount of estrogen a woman needs for that is very small. and the estrogen levels achieved by that specific estrogen therapy will not be anywhere close to what the body used to have when you were younger in order to meaningfully impact your GSM symptoms. For example, when you were younger, your estrogen used to be somewhere between 150 and 300 around the ovulation time when you were peaking. As you get older in your 40s and early 50s, your estrogen will decline significantly. It might never be above 100. Now, during and after menopause, your estrogen levels will plummet. They're usually below 50. And there are women who have zero estrogen when they get tested. I've seen that. Now, they might not have zero estrogen every day. They might have a little here and there, 10, 20, 15, 30 occasionally. But overall, their estrogen is very low. If you choose estrogen therapy by using a patch, let's say a moderate dose of 0.05 milligram, you're doing the patch twice a week, Monday, Thursday, you apply to the lower abdomen, you will likely get about 50, let's call it units, whatever the measurement is on the level of the blood test that you get back from the lab. And just to make it simple for you to understand, so if your level was initially 0, now your level with the patch will be about 50. That would be too low to address meaningfully and 100% the dryness, the painful sex, the recurrent UTI, or the recurrent vaginal infections in some women. So on top of that vaginal estrogen from the patch, you might want to consider, instead of raising the dose on the patch, since you don't have any other symptoms, just add some vaginal estrogen. So now that I illustrated the difference between systemic estrogen replacement therapy and vaginal topical estrogen, let me make it clear that there will be 3 categories or 3 groups of women that are going to need vaginal estrogen and who could really benefit from vaginal estrogen. Obviously, the first group would be women who desire or need vaginal estrogen because they have persistent symptoms of genitourinary issues. And these will be women who are already using estrogen. They're already using an estrogen therapy, patch, pellets, estradiol gel, estradiol cream, etc. They're using estrogen in a delivery form that's going to deliver estrogen to the entire body. But again, like I said, they might not get enough levels to help alleviate their symptoms of genitourinary menopause issues. The level that they have from their estrogen therapy method is enough to make them feel better and got rid of their hot flashes. It helped their sleep, their mood. Perhaps it helped other symptoms, joint pain, foggy brain, but it didn't get rid of the genitourinary symptoms of menopause. So this type of estrogen that they will get vaginally will be delivered sporadically, but consistently and persistently in the manner of 2 to 3 times per week. It's going to be applied vaginally at night when a woman goes to bed. More on that in a second. A second group of women that will need vaginal estrogen are women who for some reason have chosen to enter and live through menopause and then decades after menopause without estrogen. Probably 90% of these women chose to do so based on the fear of estrogen and the possible harmful consequences they've been told, they've heard from friends, family, even their doctors that they should avoid using estrogen. So they did. Now, this group of women has significant genitourinary symptoms of menopause, and they decide after years of suffering, they're no longer willing to put up with this. They seek relief. And they remain open-minded to the idea that, hey, wait a minute, I don't really want to use estrogen with progesterone and have all the side effects of it, the possible consequences, the cost, etc. But they want to try topical vaginal estrogen use. So they start the therapy. They see results quickly in a few weeks, or after a few months, they decide to continue. And they do so for many decades. And a third group of women are women who are told estrogen in any way, shape, or form is contraindicated for them. They're pretty much told, no, do not use estrogen. And I'm talking about breast cancer survivors, women who have had a heart attack or a stroke, or they carry a genetic predisposition to some form of clot, or they have some other cancer that's estrogen sensitive. Their doctors have told them estrogen is dangerous. Now, in spite of the fact that they feel the negative consequences of the loss of estrogen in their bodies, and despite of the fact that these women suffer a significant array of vaginal, sexual wellness, as well as urinary symptoms, most of them literally suffer in silence, because when they bring up those symptoms to their doctors, it's pointless. They're not being told anything that they could do. They're told, hey, buy some lubricant, use it, and take an antibiotic when you got a UTI. But beyond that, they're not told what to do. Unfortunately, the truth is out there, and these doctors that tell them no, estrogen should not be used and it's not safe, these doctors should be up to date with the most current recommendations. And the current recommendations are that vaginal estrogen is safe. And it does not achieve any meaningful systemic levels that require any form of progesterone. I'll talk more about that probably in next week's episode about the surveillance and what's needed if we decide to do vaginal estrogen for decades as the only form of therapy. Now, the whole point of today's episode is really to reassure these three categories of women. And if you know someone that falls in one of these categories and she's holding back because she's afraid of estrogen, please send her this episode, because the point is that vaginal estrogen is absolutely safe and is recommended to address all the vaginal wellness, all the sexual wellness, and urinary wellness symptoms that are caused by the loss of estrogen after menopause. In the further upcoming episode in this series, I will go over alternative non-estrogen, non-hormonal modalities that we can use successfully in some cases, just in case we do have this level of fear. And women sometimes want to use estrogen as a last resort. There are those women. And I'll go over what you can do if you say no to estrogen in any way, shape, or form. We all have our beliefs and our fears and our priorities. This is zero judgment on whoever decides after listening to today's episode that estrogen is no-go for them. Stay tuned. I will give you a long list of things that you can consider. But I have made this point before about estrogen. Estrogen is safe. And I've made this point that once a reputation has been tarnished, it's very difficult to convince the people around your intimate circle or extended social circle, as well as everyone else, that they're wrong. It's like you're an ant trying to move a mountain. It's just impossible. Why the reputation thing? Well, because estrogen's reputation has been wrongly and perhaps intentionally or unintentionally been tarnished by this 30-year-old study whose findings were released in 2001. That's 25 years ago. That's a quarter of a century ago. But this led to the FDA applying a black box warning on all estrogen products, warning women that estrogen can increase risk of clotting, stroke, heart attack, and cancer. Now, 2 decades later, even though there's an abundant amount of data and scientific evidence and expert opinions, including expert opinions that come from very reputable medical societies regarding the inappropriateness of this black box warning on all estrogen products, and despite a quite strong ongoing campaign around this topic, which is asking the FDA to remove the black box warning from vaginal estrogen products, which are not used daily, which are not going through the liver, which are not stimulating the clotting mechanisms of a woman's body, which are not going to lead to persistent elevations of blood levels of estrogen enough to matter or increase risk for any type of cancer. In spite of this, the FDA has been extremely resistant and refuses to accept and act on the evidence that they've been presented with. Now, how many women's lives could be significantly improved by avoiding recurrent UTIs, which, by the way, can be deadly as a woman ages? How many women's lives and relationships could be improved if their ability to be intimate with their partner would be restored? How many women's lives could be improved if they didn't have to wear incontinence pads because they leak on the way to the bathroom every day? You'd think, well, it's a no-brainer. if estrogen can do all that, vaginal estrogen can do all that, let's remove the black box warning. It's safe. It's been proven. It's not how the FDA looks at it. As a matter of fact, we don't really know how the FDA is looking at it. There has been no statement or release or explanation why, in the spite of the evidence presented, that vaginal estrogen is safe and doesn't have all the side effects that are slapped on all the estrogen products from the black box warning, why the FDA continues to apply this, scaring women off of vaginal estrogen. That's not clear. Now, it comes down to this. As a woman confronted with a situation of terrible quality of life and symptoms that are really bothersome, or as a woman who's got some mild symptoms, but you're heading down the way of moderate to severe symptoms, and you just don't know it, but you're on your way there, who are you going to believe? The doctor who recommends the vaginal estrogen and gives you all the information about it and takes the time to explain that it's very safe, it's very likely to improve your quality of life? Or are you going to believe your family members, your friends, maybe the social media, and maybe your other doctors who are likely very well intended, but uninformed? Who are you going to believe and who are you going to follow? Now, I did say something 2 minutes ago, and I will repeat this because it's very important. I want you to know this and be aware of this because this is not something you hear from many doctors. It's not something you hear from social media and your very well-intended family and friends. They don't know this. So I'm going to tell it to you like it is. As a woman ages and goes further and further away from the time of menopause into her senior 60s and beyond years, it is common knowledge that the initial menopausal symptoms will improve. The hot flashes, the sleep disturbances, the mood disturbances will all get better the further you get away from menopause and the older you are. Yes, these menopausal symptoms can last all the way up to a decade, but they will all get better, okay? Everybody knows, it's common knowledge, and many women hold on for years waiting for this to get better and to improve. And it does. What you're not being told, and what is actually common knowledge in many medical circles, and what pretty much all your informed or educated OBGYNs, urology doctors, urogynecology experts, even your cancer doctors who scare you off of any estrogen should know is this. Your genital and urinary symptoms of menopause will continue to get worse and worse the further away from menopause you go. There is nothing to make the loss of estrogen consequences of your vaginal, sexual, and urinary wellness better. Very different and the exact opposite of what was happening or will happen with your menopause symptoms. With your hot flashes and the night sweats and the sleep disturbance and the mood changes and the foggy brain, all of that will get better. But your vaginal dryness and discomfort will continue to worsen the further away from menopause you go, and the longer it takes for your vaginal tissues to go on without estrogen. They will simply get drier and thinner and less elastic as you get older. Your vaginal microbiome, which needs lactobacilli, the friendly bacteria to stay in balance and protect you from vaginal infections and urinary infections, is highly dependent on glycogen. This is the substrate for the food of lactobacilli. Once estrogen is gone, there's nothing to sustain the glycogen, which normally sustains the lactobacilli bacteria. We have not found a meaningful, sustainable, cost-effective way of restoring the vaginal microbiome after menopause without estrogen. Your urethra, which is the small canal that connects your bladder to the outside, and your bladder trigone, which is the bottom of the bladder that sits right on top of your vagina, and it's marked by these 3 points, urethra in the middle at the bottom, and the 2 openings for the ureters on the top. These tissues are highly sensitive to estrogen. The mucosa of your urinary tract has a very large amount of estrogen receptors, which means that estrogen is highly influential for a woman's urinary well-being. If you haven't listened to my last episode, it's all about the timing and how crucial it is to start early if you plan to live your menopause in an optimal way with the best quality of life possible. So Join me next week as I discuss in more detail the available options for vaginal estrogen as well as the non-hormonal options to address the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. I'll end here because I don't want to bother you anymore. This has been a lot of information, and I hope you can consider to refer this episode and send it to someone who might have told you in confidence that they have all these problems and their wits end and they don't know what to do because their doctors have not helped them. A little estrogen can go a very, very, very long way. Thank you for trusting me with your time, and thank you for listening to today's episode. If the content I provided wowed you, was helpful and valuable to either you or someone close to you, please do me a favor and leave me a review. I am very open and welcome any kind of feedback as well as suggestions on any content ideas, so please forward those suggestions to Jessica, my patient care coordinator, through our website, herabeautyandwellness.com. And I look forward to our time together next episode.